So, welcome back to the FFS Podcast after our all-nighter with David Campo Campese.
It's a much more sociable time, I'll say that.
It is a much more sociable time. We thought we'd have a week off after that one and let people watch it all. So, which has proved very popular, along with all of them.
Yeah.
Actually. They're all been really good guests. And
I think with Campese, the name as well, doesn't it? Draws a lot in, to be fair. But
yeah. I could see today, actually, he had on his podcast Michael Checker.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, it was picked up by Fox Sports. They were running stories off it because.
I bet there is. Yeah.
I think we got a mention.
Did we?
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah.
No, he was fascinating guest. I'll give you that. I thought he'd be outspoken, but Christ, he shot from the hip from minute one, didn't he?
He did. And you know, I mean, I'm terrible with stats. You have a stat of how well things are doing. And his bit where he was talking about the British Lions and when he was talking about Israel Frau with his exit of the World Cup were two spikes in the...
I bet, yeah.
In the viewing state. So, people like controversy, don't they?
For all his belligerence, I thought he was very interesting. I thought there were a lot of good points in there. I mean, a lot of completely one-sided points, but I think it certainly made me think about things a lot deeper, actually. You know, he was almost saying it's overcomplicated, isn't it? Just go back to basics, get ex-players in, expertise, learn to pass. You know, it doesn't make you think if we've just tried to make the game so complex in the last couple of years, we'll begin to confuse ourselves, you know. But no, he was a good laugh. He
was. Yeah. Well, I got to say, when he did, which wasn't on the camera, he pulled me up when I obviously said Campo, and then you called him Campo all the way through the interview.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, it was a bit late at night for me to remember the P's and Q's, to be fair.
No, he was fine. He was fine with it.
No, he's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, right, the sport has come back as well. We've football's back. Liverpool have won the league. Very
much so. Yeah, we talked about that on our very first podcast, didn't we? Would they win? And to be honest, I mean, okay, yes, there was scenes with support which obviously we got picked up on, but I think overall, I thought it came over a lot better than people thought it would. I thought people thought that these titles being won, these football games, were just going to be a case of get them out there, get it done for financial reasons because of the Sky packages and everything, and it won't be the same. But there was a lot of genuine feeling. It felt real, I think, the Liverpool fans, the way they won the title. A lot of emotion poured out, even via social media. You saw Leeds in the playoffs the other day. They won 4-0 on Saturday, and they're actually drawn and slipped up since. But big celebrations of players, but nearly reaching the Premier League. So all this theory that it wouldn't matter as much, it wouldn't be quite the same, I think that hasn't quite rung true. It's obviously not the same watching the matches. And the whole environment. I was actually at Liberty in Swansea on Saturday myself. It was quite weird. I think it still means just as much to players and fans. I think it has it's given a big lift. Football coming back.
Yeah, no, it's good. And any sign of anything local coming back on, or
within football and rugby circles? No, there's much more positive news of cricket at the moment. The English government see the cricket ball as the natural vector of the disease, so they've had that on delay. But in fact, the news we're hearing this morning is that recreational cricket could be given the go-ahead in England now as early as July the 11th. We're a couple of weeks behind that, so there is a chance that have local cricket here in August. In terms of rugby and football, the only announcement we had is the rugby season won't start in September. I assume football follows suit. The FAW being quite far behind, to be honest, the WRU in their announcements, but that looking like more like a Christmas return or just before Christmas at best.
Because I spent all day yesterday going through all the sort of governing bodies, you know, what they've released on, you know, the COVID virus, how to get things back, whether, you know, for our activities, our events, and then looking at other, you know, like Swim England, you know, all the other different governing body stuff I could get hold of to read what they've put in. And after spending the whole day of it, I think the only thing that sort of came out was a 2 metre gap and wash your hands. You know?
Yeah, I know.
It's a lot of writing, a lot of guidance, and there's not really much. There's no sort of super nuggets in there. Oh, this is what we can do. This is what we can't do. yeah, it's really frustrating because you're seeing a lot of things that are happening elsewhere, and
Yes.
people gathering, people doing what they want, and then it's
No, there is frustration when you see certain restrictions being lifted on pubs and things in England coming into Wales on July the 13th, that sort of thing. And yet there's probably a lot of sports which could safely be run now down our way, where thankfully we haven't really been hit by big waves of the coronavirus, certainly not in our own immediate area, which are being held back. And it's an anxious time. Gym owners, who probably feel that they could, or might even be feeling patronised. They feel they could organise their gyms accordingly, and they're not being allowed to open. And financially, it's hard times coming. So I understand the anxiety and the frustration, and people like yourself as well, obviously. It
is, and I'm all for we've stuck to the lockdown. I'm all for the safety of it and everything like that. It'd be interesting to see what happens in England if there is a second wave. But it is frustrating in trying to get things back moving. And
anyway, before we get started, you've seen your Ultra Series for next year. Should be all right by then.
I have, yes. So going to do an Ultra Series.
Fascinating.
The Rastewi Sant will add one on to that. So that'll be a 40 mile on the coast path to start with. The MDC, the Marathon de Coats, will be part of it.
And then the 24-hour.
And then a 24-hour one in St David's. So that will be in December, I think. So over an 8 month period. Some prize money for people, there will be a caveat there. Like, you'll have to do at least 2 events and reach a certain amount of points. We don't want one person just doing.
Totally agree.
So you've got to put something in place that make it suitable. Yeah. So do you fancy that?
I've been having a look. I will be up. I've been only actually starting the last couple of weeks, extending my run distances. Funny enough, like 40 miles. I'm going about 12, 13 at the moment. But it is. I'm going to see how that goes, and it is something I'm going to think about whether I do all 3. Certainly, I've always been a useless sleeper, so the 24-hour one appeals actually. So it's certainly ultra running. Certainly something that interests me. Whether I spend the first part of next year doing it and then look to go later, because I think the 24-hour one's not till December.
No, December the 4th, I think it is.
Or whether from the start, but it's certainly something I'm looking at and beginning to experiment with.
Because I tell you what we're going to do is, we had the unfortunate news, the Ramsey Island was off because the island's not opening. So I've
that's one less trophy for me, I know.
So but what we're going to do, I think on the same weekend as that, on the Saturday, the 12th of September, is do a St David's 3 Peaks. And so I've been out and about doing the Can Clytie, Penberry, and Can Llaetha, doing those Excellent. 3 peaks. So that will be like a 10 miler, start and finish in White Sands, all trail. That could be in September. Hopefully by September a very small event.
Well, the coast paths are open, so there's a major step forward, isn't there?
So that's it. Anyway, enough of that. We have got a guest on today. Jamie. I'll have to ask him how we pronounce his name. Jamie McAnsh, I think it is.
He's about to put my 12-mile road run in the shade, really, isn't he?
He is, yeah. We'll let him obviously explain what he's all about, but I he's sort of ex-army, ran his own businesses, and he was struck down with tragedy, and then he was made, I think he was paralysed, to a certain degree, and he's worked to get that back. He's
got a hell of a story to tell.
He has got a hell of a story. So what we'll do is we'll get Jamie on, and he can tell us about his stories and put us to shame, really.
Sure.
All right. So we'll give him a shout. There we go. And today we are joined by Jamie McAnsh. Is that pronounced properly, Jamie?
It's McAnsh, but to be honest with you, I'll get called anything. It's fine.
All right.
Jamie will do for this, I think.
Jamie will do, yeah. We won't go any further than that. So, Jamie's here with us. And, as I was saying, Jamie's got a remarkable story. We'll get what we can out of him and hear him. A very inspirational sort of character. I heard him speak, must be about 6-7 months ago now or something. at an event with young people where he was speaking, and yeah, it was well worth being there just to hear that. So we're delighted that you've joined us, Jamie, and we'll just take it from there. So as we ask everyone over the last 3 months, how's lockdown been going? You know, what have you been up to?
Yeah, no, lockdown, to be fair, actually, I'm one of these people that have quite enjoyed lockdown in some aspects, because it's forced the world to slow down, and it's given us a bit of time. So it's given me time to put into place all the little things that I've wanted to do in my own business, and it's given me time to be able to do that and achieve that. But yeah, I think lockdown's actually given everybody a little bit of time to go, do I really need to do that? Do I really need that? You know, it's kind of, and I kind of like that. So, but yeah, it's been all right. It hasn't been too bad, but I'm ready to get out now. I'm ready to get back released into society, and actually go and see three-dimensional people, which I think is going to be quite strange, to be honest. Not sure what to do with them. Do I hug them? Do I shake their hand? Do I stay away from them? I don't know.
Jamie, through your line of work, obviously it's motivational speaking and communicating with people a lot. You're grateful that the world is like it is. We're all moaning that everything's done on computers now, and you know, social media wasn't about when we were kids. We were out on bikes and all that. But as for someone like you, it's been an extremely useful tool for communicating with people you need to be in touch with.
Yeah, no, it's been good, and I've still done webinars and seminars virtually as well. So I work with a lot of schools and learning organisations, and come March, they all shut down, which basically dried up all my work as a speaker until effectively at the beginning up until the end of September. But I have been approached by quite a few private schools to do webinars and seminars via Zoom, and that's been very successful. And one I done recently had like 400 attendees, and it was literally in countries from the UK to China. And there was Brazil, Spain, Germany, Austria, Thailand, and they were all on different time zones as well. So that was very interesting, but it was incredibly successful. So yeah, the technology's there, and we've used it. We've all used it in our daily business. But one thing that I really enjoy doing is meetings on Zoom, because I can have a meeting in Cardiff, one in Newport, one in Blackwood, and I don't have to drive anywhere. And I think that, so it's not, if nothing else, it's improving the environment a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a massive positive. And I'll be honest with you, for me personally, I think I'll be using this platform and these services a little bit more into the future as well.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely done that, I think, made people think that you don't have to drive all around the place to have like a 10, 15, 20-minute face-to-face, do you? You can...
No, that's right.
You could do it like this quite comfortably. If we just take a step back, obviously I was talking about, when I saw you speak in Slesley. If I could just ask you to give us a little bit of your sort of background and your story and where you've ended up being. I know at that conference you gave I think a 10-minute sort of précis about your journey, so to speak, which really did sort of made me sit up and listen. So I'm just wondering for our listeners, if you could sort of just give us a little bit of a brief lowdown on that.
Yeah, no problem. A little bit of a snippet into my story and my journey. So I was perfectly able-bodied. All right, I'm ex-forces. I've done several different types of jobs and had different careers. And then in November 2013, I had shingles. Unknowns to me, the shingles had affected my nervous tract in my spinal column. And when you never get rid of shingles, it just lives in your body, and it retracts to a main nerve, and that's where it kind of stays. But during my time of having shingles, it had damaged all the sensory nerves from my from the gap between my L1 and L2 disc in my spine. So everything below that. And to give you an idea, that's belly button height. And it affected all of my organs and my lower limbs. So I now have spasms. I have periods of massive pain, and then I have other periods of what I just call pain. the pain level of the condition I have, which is complex regional pain syndrome. To put it onto the spectrum, it actually sits above childbirth, and it also sits above amputation without anaesthetic. So as you can imagine, it goes from intense to super intense. So yeah, I didn't realize that this was the case. And in January 2014, I went to bed, January the 6th, and something happened during my sleep that actually triggered this reaction, and I ruptured my spine. And when I woke up on the 7th, I was paralysed from the waist down, or from the belly button down.
Sorry, that's just to stop briefly there, Jimmy. So I was reading into your story that you woke up one morning with complex regional pain syndrome. Now, I took that as a throwaway line. I didn't realize you literally woke up in the morning with it, having not gone to bed with it.
Yeah, so I went to bed on the 6th, perfectly normal. And, you know, I locked the front door, locked the back door. I was married at the time, so I kissed my wife goodnight, you know, give the dog a touch. Went to bed, and then when I woke up, I was just in this and I couldn't move my legs. And although I did get some movement back in my lower body, but I had this, like, the only way I can describe it is like rubbery pins and needles feeling in both my legs, and the pain was excruciating. And by the sort of end of January, I had almost no mobility whatsoever, and I was confined to a wheelchair. I'm not going to use that word, actually. I wasn't confined to a wheelchair. I used a wheelchair. But basically that tool gave me the freedom I needed. I knew there was something seriously going wrong, but I genuinely thought I'd trapped a nerve. And when I went to the doctors, that's what he said. I think you've trapped a nerve. He recommended chiropractic. That was unsuccessful. I then had scans. They didn't bring anything back because your sensory nerves are so fine. They don't come up on CAT scans and CT scans because they're not big enough. So, you know, those signals aren't there. So it took 13 months in the end to actually diagnose what was physically wrong with me. And that was off the cuff because I had a different doctor, and I was speaking to them, and I said to him, he said, "Well, what's the pain like?" And I said, "Well, I'll be honest with you, the pain, I've had shingles in 2013, and that's painful. The pain I've got at the moment is even more intense." And he stopped me there and he said, "When did you have shingles?" So I told him, and he went, "I know exactly what you've got, and I know exactly what's happened." And he picked it up straight away. And then I got tested for CRPS, or went to a pain specialist who then said, "Yeah, you've definitely got," and I had all the symptoms, the swelling of the joints, the redness, the hot temperature in the legs. I had, you know, a good chunk of the symptoms that CRPS sufferers get. And yeah, I was diagnosed from there. And to be honest with you, like, nothing really changed. It was, now I've got a diagnosis, it's a lot easier to kind of get on because you know what's going on. But I was already by that point living my life to the full, you know. So 2014, I started playing basketball for Cardiff. Later that year, I was playing rugby for Wales. By the October, I had climbed Penny Van in a wheelchair. Come January 2015, I'd already come to terms with what was going on around me. And I kind of laid the able-bodied version of me to rest. And I had a funeral. I actually had a physical funeral for the able-bodied version.
Really?
Which a lot of people kind of question as to why.
Yeah.
But the reason being is because it didn't matter. By this point, I was a year down the journey, and I'd realized that whatever happened now, I was never going to be the same person that went to bed on the 6th of January 2014. That person was never going to be there again, because I had learned so much. I'd learned who my friends were. I'd learned who those who were important to me were. I'd taken a drug overdose by that point as well, and I learned the value of my own life, which is it's a lesson that, you know, not many people get to have. But, you know, I'm a survivor, and I survived that. I found sport. I found a new family of friends and connections, and, you know, I was a different person. I was was a lot more self-encouraged at that point.
Jamie,
So,
I mean this is a compliment. That for me is a very quick transition from understanding the condition you had to then setting about climbing mountains, playing wheelchair rugby, and the rest of it. How are you able to make that switch so quickly? This is, you know, a life-changing condition that you were diagnosed with. And was there any time? Was there a little period at least where you took stock and were like, I can't believe this has happened to me, or were you able to flow?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You go through ups and downs, and I still get them now. And I have a very special term for that. It's called muddy puddle days. So I still get my muddy puddle days where I feel that, you know, life is just getting too much. But I hit massive depression very, very quickly. I went through anger very quickly because I didn't know what was going on with me.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that level of anger. I was just frustrated because I didn't know what was happening. And my transition was instant with no explanation. So it wasn't like I had a car accident or, you know, had a bike accident or something like that. You know, that wasn't the case for me. So I had to kind of get over that a little bit, and that led to frustration. Frustration then led to depression. And the reason I took a drug overdose was I felt like I was a burden on those around me, and I felt that very, very quickly. And me and my ex-wife were on our way out to a wedding, and I looked down and I wet myself because I had no bladder control. And from that point, I just felt useless. I just felt like I was not worthy. You know, I was just a strain on those around me. And that's what led to the overdose.
Right. And that was very much a deliberate intention to self-harm, the overdose.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I thought I was putting people out of their own misery by having to deal with me. And
Sure.
I know that sounds very harsh, but that is exactly where I was. And then a friend of mine, done something that not many people had actually done at that point. He listened. He asked me what was wrong. He asked me, you know, what's going on. And I let it all out. And I had done something that I've not done, which was speak. And I just let it all out. He just listened. He never tried to fix me. He never tried to answer me. He never tried to give me a solution. He literally just sat there and listened. And to be honest with you, it was like the gateway opened.
Sure.
And then he was the one that recommended I took up sport and I played basketball. And from there, my support network grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, one of the ladies that I'm involved with in basketball, and I'll mention her name. Her name is Jo Coates McGrath. And I got a lot of time for Jo. And she was the one that got me into other sports. So I started playing basketball, and then she said, "Oh, Jay, there's a new rugby team setting up, and they're really interested in having a chat with you. They've seen you play basketball. They've seen that you're quite fast. And do you fancy going for trials?" And I'm like, "Yeah, right." So I went for trials, and I got into the squad. So very quickly, I was then playing rugby for Wales. She was the one that then got me into disability squash as well. So she was like, "Oh, there's a club in Cardiff that is looking to open up a disability section of the sport, but it doesn't exist. Would you like to get involved?" And I was like, "Yeah, right." And that's exactly what I did. The mountain thing, where that came from, was I was a mountaineer. I was an adventurer. I love mountains, and I am playing, you know, basketball, rugby, doing this, doing that, hand cycling. I'm getting into all of these different sports. I'm thinking, what I really want to do is climb a mountain. And that's exactly what I did. I decided to set myself that challenge. It gave me something to focus on. I had a great team around me, and they all said, "Okay, well, if you want to climb it, we'll climb it. This is how, you know, let's work out a plan." And that's exactly what we did. And, you know, even halfway up the mountain, we were still looking at ways to adapt the plan because it had not been done, or I certainly hadn't done it before, and neither of the guys around me. So yeah, it was a relatively quick transition period, but that was because I went through extreme at the beginning and hit rock bottom extremely. I fell off a cliff basically. And when you hit rock bottom, if you have the right mindset and you're willing to listen and think outside the box, you're very surprised in how quickly you grow in yourself as well, and especially when you're open to people helping you around you. Yeah, So, no, I take that question, and I take it as a compliment as well. Because, you know, there's not many people that have transitioned the way I did, but then there's not many people that hit rock bottom as quickly as I did. Yeah, because I'm quite hard and self-critical. So so 2015 was a start of a new year. And that was where Challenge 2015 came in, which I'm sure you may have heard about, and I know that I've mentioned it a few times.
And of course, that led you to the Charles Holland Award, is it?
It did, yeah. So I was sat on how that came about, how Challenge 2015 came about. Everything's a journey. Everything is step by step by step. And I was sat on top of Penny Van, and all the way I was pushing up Penny Van, I had people walking up past me, and they were cheering me and, "Come on, mate, you're doing well." I mean, you know, they've gone out for a Sunday stroll, and there's this lunatic pushing his way up a mountain in a wheelchair. Yeah, it attracts people's attention. Do you know what I mean? It's just a natural thing, right? Yeah. But what I hadn't noticed was none of them had come back off the mountain. And when I got up onto the summit, which is a flat summit, I was pushing out, and it was all foggy and stuff, so you couldn't really see much. And I pushed out of the fog to basically the top of the mountain being full of people that I did not know, all cheering and clapping and, you know, jeering me on. And obviously I'm a very manly guy, so I sat there and burst into tears because that's what I do, right? And I remember my wife put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "See, you can do anything you put your mind to." And that was where Challenge 2015 came into place, because I was like, yeah, you're right, I can. But I don't know what I can or cannot do. So I set myself 12 extreme challenges to find out what I could do. And that's where that came about. And one of them was the Watford Challenge, which is 30K over Brecon Beacons. I'm still the only person that's ever done that in a wheelchair. And I've also now done it since. I've done it on crutches. And in 2015, you know, with everything that I did, I raised £250,000 for charity. Yeah. And it was off the back of that I got nominated for the Charles Holland Award. And I received it in 2016, which was, that's a story in itself, mate. Let me tell you, I'll never forget that phone call. It was very interesting. But unfortunately, my father passed away in March 2016, so he never actually seen me win the award. I'm not sure how many people got it now, but I think I was like the 5th person in the UK to receive one, which is it's amazing.
It was quite the 2 years, that period, eh?
Yeah, just over 2 years.
Yeah.
And wow, you know what 2 years it's been like. You know, up until sort of the end of 2016, my life had become a roller coaster, not anything else. You know, I'd started playing squash by that point as well. So I started playing squash because I was already playing basketball. I was hand cycling. I'd hand cycled for South Wales as well by that point. Played rugby for Wales. Raised loads of money. I got back on a motorbike, and I was racing a motorbike for, you know, part of my challenges. I pioneered WCMX, which is wheelchair motocross. In the UK, Aaron Fotheringham started it in the US. I brought it over to the UK, set up the WCMX.co.uk brand, and then sold the brand. But I didn't really sell it. I gave it away, actually. I should have sold it. That's what I should say. But there was someone else in Southampton who was like massively keen to get it going. And I basically said, look, build the website, build the brand. I'll hand everything over to you. Have it and run with it. And as far as I know, it's still running. I set up the Challenge 2015, hashtag 2015, hashtag branding, if you like. And that's gone, obviously, mate, search that, right? That's just gone weird. Someone the other day, or a couple of years ago, as a challenge, ate 2015 spring rolls for charity. I mean, that's some challenge. Like, I'd rather climb Penny Van on my hands. So it was good things. And since then, with the squash world, I'm the only disabled squash player registered in the world, or with a low body impairment. Yeah. Started playing in a wheelchair. Then I competed in the Welsh Open Masters in 2018. And then at the beginning in April 2019, I competed in the European Masters as the only low body impairment player. I never won any of those competitions, by the way. But as I always say, you never lose. You only ever win and learn. I learned a lot of learning from both of them.
So in that squash, in the squash, then you would play in the Masters, the Welsh Championships and the European Championships. Against, was that against able-bodied people? Just
able-bodied players. Yeah. Well, I am the only lower body impairment player in the world, so if I was playing against lower body impairment, it'd be a pretty short game.
So you went in and you took on that challenge then to.
Yeah. So I started playing squash, as I said, originally in a wheelchair, and I had a great coach, a guy called Richard Plenty, who's brilliant, and I had some really amazing, inspirational people around me. Peter Creed, who Welsh, I think he's Welsh number 2 now. Well, he was Welsh number 1, but I think he's Welsh number 2 now, but he may still be number 1. Tesney Evans, who's women's world number 9, I think. I had these as my kind of inspiration, and then you had trainers like Richard Plenty around me, and Richard Murphy and Bob Perry, and these really inspiring guys who seen what I was doing and just went, well, what do you want to do next? And when I went up to Richard and said, Rich, I love playing squash, but I want to compete. I want to compete in a challenge. And he was like, okay, great. How are we going to do it? I was like, I don't really know. And at the time, I was still only playing in a wheelchair. So we started. So basically, and this is going to sound really callous, but this is what happened, right? So I turned up to squash one day and I had a puncher in my wheelchair. And I was like, I've got a puncher. So he said, well, that's all right. We'll sit you on the court in a chair. I was like, no, I've got a better idea. Why don't I get my crutches out of the car? Because I was doing physio at the time. I said, why didn't I just get my crutches out of the car and we'll have a go on crutches? And he was like, okay, this is going to go really well or really badly. And I was like, mate, I'm 6 foot. It's not that far to fall. We'll be fine. So he stood me on the side in the middle of the court, got a cannon, which fires squash balls at me, and just fired squash balls at me for an hour and 45 minutes. And it was great because I could hit them in a single place, which was mean I was learning my balance. And then from there, we started moving, and along with my physio and putting squash into play, like my balance was improving like astronomically. And I was very determined because one of the exercises I had to do to improve my balance was I had to stand. So I would watch telly, and when the adverts came on, I'd stand up through the whole of the adverts. And then when they went off, I'd sit back down again. And the balance thing was we had a dwarf wall in the living room, and I had building blocks, kiddies building blocks, 6 of them. So I would have them stacked in the middle. And whilst I was watching telly, I would stand there and move the blocks from side to side, improving my balance. And my physiotherapist said I should do 1 hour of physio a day. So, and I totally took that on board, and done like 6 or 7. So when I was going back, she was like, how much physio have you done this week? I'd be like, 40 hours. And she'd be like, Jay, you're supposed to do 1. I was like, yeah, I know, I got carried away. But yeah, 6 months later, I climbed Penny Van again, on crutches. And there's actually a video out there somewhere.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Me crawling my way up Penny Van, which was quite interesting. But yeah, I've always had that kind of determined, I can do this kind of attitude. Yeah. Good.
I mean, that's amazing. Can I just take you back a bit? So you said you said you had a funeral for your able body. That's right? Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
And so, how do you look back upon your life then pre-January the 6th, 2014? Do you look back and reminisce and talk about things, or do you have much contact with it, or have you sort of just started afresh as much as you can in your mind?
It's funny because I look back at my able-bodied version of me, right? This other guy that I once knew, and it's quite funny because when I talk about it, it's like as if I'm talking about someone else. It's like a third party, because I can't physically remember much from that time because, well, I'm getting old. It doesn't help. But it's kind of like I've packed in so much in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And then. I reminisce. I mean, we've just recently bought my mum and dad's house. So I grew up in this house. And this used to be my bedroom as a child. It's now my office. My neighbours have been my neighbours effectively for like 20-odd years. 29 years they were my neighbours with my parents. So yeah, there's that reminiscence. You know, we sit down and we would chat with my neighbours and we'll talk about when I was a kid and stuff like that. And that's a bit weird because they're now my neighbours. You know, it's strange, but it's lovely. I don't generally, like, I was in the army for 5 years. I very rarely talk about it. You know, I was a funeral director for 5 years. I've got no real, you know, I've got a plaque on my wall, which is my leaving present, and that is my only connection really to the army. But then I was a funeral director for roughly the same time, and I don't really have any coffins hanging on my wall or anything like that. So I'm not one that kind of holds on to the past. You know, that was a time that's kind of I've lived and gone, and yeah, I value it and I respect it, and I took my learnings from it. But to be honest with you, it's time gone. I can't turn the clock back, so I don't worry about it. That's the two things I don't worry about. I don't worry about the past, and I don't worry about the future. You know, I worry about what's happening now, and that's a lesson that I try and teach young people, because you know there's an old saying that if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future, and the only time you're at peace is when you're living in the now. So yeah, I do think about it sometimes. You know, like the things I used to do. But other than that, that's about it. Like, I don't sit there and go, oh, I wish I was still doing this, or I wish I was still doing that, because I'm incredibly lucky in the way that I can still do a lot of the things I used to do. I just have to do it in a different way. So I do consider myself probably one of the luckiest people in the world for that, really.
I think that mindset's critical. I think if you're at the point where you're longing to be, when you're able-bodied, for want of a better term, that's maybe where the depression, anxiety sets in, doesn't it? You know, it's about learning who you are now and maximizing that. And now you're doing things which arguably you would never done when you were able. You would have taken them for granted, you know.
Yeah, completely. I'd never have competed for Wales in rugby. Yeah. You know, I mean, like, well, as an able-bodied person, I couldn't even play rugby. You know, so yeah. Absolutely, and this
you might be giving a few some callous ideas, yes.
Yeah. You know, this is why I had that funeral, was because it wasn't a big affair. Do you know what I mean? I didn't invite the family around; we just went off. And I took a load of photos of my past, you know, and I remembered them, and I respected them, and I laid them to rest. And I've done since then. I've had funerals for family members and my own father, and you know, I often look at photos of my dad and I reminisce about things we used to do together, and you know, but I don't hang up on it. You know, they're good memories, and I've got some good memories of that as an able-bodied person. You know, but yeah, it really is the same. It really is the same thing. You know, and life changes for all of us. You know, yes, mine was extreme, but life changes for all of us. And I've got no children, but if one day, yeah. For me, waking up disabled is very similar to waking up with a child. You know, your life changes. You're all of a sudden you've got to pack clothes in case accidents happen on the way out the house. Yeah, been there, done that. Instead of a pram, I have a wheelchair. Yeah, got that t-shirt covered. You know, and I started putting it into the humorous side of things. You know, I think like a lot of people would go, having a child and become disabled are completely different. I'm like, it's not. You know, your life changes. You can't do the things you used to do when you become a parent, the same way as you can't do the things you used to do now that I'm disabled. And if I go somewhere, I've got to plan it. Like, I used to go at Penny Van on a Sunday. I'd be like driving up the road. Oh, should we go to Penny Van? Yeah, go on in, let's do it. All right, wicked, I'll meet you up there. Yeah, brilliant. I can't do that now. It's a 6-month plan. It's a whole expedition. You know, it's the same thing. If I go out for a meal, is it child friendly or is it disabled friendly? And I've been to plenty of restaurants where I get there and I'm like, can't get in. Because it's got 6 steps going up to the front. I should have planned that. It really is very, very similar. And I think life change is life changer. So many people put like an extremity on something, but that's not always the case. You know, someone once said to me, and this was at the early stages of my condition, they said, what would be worse, cutting off your finger or cutting off your leg? And I was like, well, cutting off your leg. And he said, okay, but what if you're a professional guitarist and your finger was what you earned your money with? What would be worse then? And I was like, wow, that was a massive kick of putting something into perspective. But it's so true, isn't it? So,
yeah.
But I mean, you know, what you just said there, and I think what Fraser touched on was, you know, we've just obviously been in lockdown now, and people, you know, there's all sorts of people suffer mental health issues. They're saying it's going to get worse. You know, and it's coming from what you just said. You know, people living in the past, thinking what they had or what they could have had. You know, is the depression, and then people worried about the future, what it's going to hold for them financially, you know, health-wise. I think it's the anxiety. And sometimes you just got to find the peace and live in the moment and do what you can in the moment. And I mean, you know, we could all say that. We could all sit here and say that to people, but obviously you're a very, very good example of that is how it can work. And this is what you've got to do to, you know, to be happy and, you know, to fight any demons that you may have, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite professional with this isolation malarkey before it ever happened. You know, like when I became disabled, I had steps going out my house. I had a manual car. I couldn't go and see my family because they had steps going into their house, and you know, every one thing and another. You know, so I'd already lived that kind of isolation, and I talk about that journey when I do my talks. I talk about that time where I was completely imprisoned in my own existence. And that was where the depression really set in. But I learned that actually you can't, you know, if someone said to me, Jamie, you know, I have a problem, I'll say to them, okay, well, can you resolve that problem? Well, no. Then why are you worried about the problem? You know, or they may say to Jamie, I have a problem. And you go, well, can you fix that problem? Yes, I can. Well, why are you worried about the problem? And it's the same about where we are right now. You know, the problem is isolation, is the pandemic. Can we change it? No. So why worry about it? Make the most of what you've got. You know, and could you imagine if all of the, you know, there's always the silver lining, right? Could you imagine if we all went into lockdown in January during the storms? So not only would we begin lockdown, places like Crickhowell, Usk, Monmouth, they got flooded. Yeah, they lost everything they had, and then went into lockdown, right? So, you know, what about if we went into lockdown, I don't know, say 10 years ago, all right? Would we be in the same position as we are now? No, because now you've got Zoom. And no, it's not the same, but I am sat here and I'm looking at both of you and I'm connecting with you. And, you know, we are in 3 different locations in the UK. The technology is there that puts us in one place, right? It could be worse. We may not have that technology, in which case isolation would be isolating, really isolating, where now it's not, because you can still have a conversation with your loved ones. The people that I worry about is the very elderly who wouldn't know one end of a Zoom call from the other. They don't have this capacity. And so when people sit there and they say to me, you know, I'm getting a bit fed up now, and that's fine. It's good to be fed up. Respect it, own it, but never let it beat you, because if you let it win, that's when trouble starts. It's great to be fed up. You know, I get fed up sometimes, but then I sit there and go, you know, actually, it could be worse. And that's not an easy mindset to have. And I always understand that, but it is the mindset you need to get through this weird and wonderful situation that we all find ourselves in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, obviously, you know, when you came out of you know, rehab and recovery, you know, you took on all these challenges, yeah, and you obviously developed yourself. You know, you mentioned all the sports you've done and the challenges you've done, and then from there you sort of went into, is that the motivational speaking? You know, how did that come about, and you know, where's that taking you?
So, to be fair, actually, that all happened in 2016. So 2017, I'll come on to in a second, but 2016, I won the award. And then from there, I was on TV, I was on radio, I was everywhere. And it was like a whirlwind, do you know what I mean? I felt like the disabled Bear Grylls. And I was just like all these people wanting to speak to me and wanting to know my channel, you know, what am I doing next? What's next on the agenda? And I was like, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out what's happening right now. And that was great. But then in 2017, my life came crashing back down around me when my wife, on the 1st of January, my wife basically told me she wanted a divorce. So I took that was a struggle to deal with, but it was very amicable, and she's now very happy. But she did something that I always considered very brave. She sat me down and was honest. She told me what she felt, and how she felt, and what she wanted to do about it. So that was great, and I always respected her for that. And then 6 weeks later, I got diagnosed with cancer. So then I was going through chemo and that treatment. Then so 2017, you could write a book just about that. Then in the August, my mum I found my mum collapsed on the living room floor, and she got diagnosed with a brain tumor. And then my brother, who was helping me look after my mother, then had 2 heart attacks. So 2017 was just this string of what was happening. So my motivational speaking kind of stuff had to kind of die a death. But by the time the end of 2016, I was getting booked to tell my story, because people wanted to know about the guy who A, climbed the penny ban on his hands, and B, the guy who won a Charles Holland Award, and also the guy who raised £250,000 charity. I was that guy. By the beginning of 2017, my life became tricky, to say the least. By the end of 2017, I was already I was coming out of chemo by then. And I went into remission in January 2018. But then my mum had her operation to have the tumor removed. And when she came out of the operation, she couldn't remember anything. She couldn't remember how to write. She couldn't remember how to read. She couldn't remember how to put a plug in the wall, how to clean her teeth, how to wash her face. And I was living with her by this point. So, I had to teach her all of that. So 2018 was kind of soaked up with that until kind of the middle of 2018. And then I just went, actually, I want to get my speaking slots back up. And, things have started to settle down a bit. And I started doing a few more talks and working with different organizations. And it didn't really become a full-time thing until February 2019. I was doing the odd talk, the WI meetings, that kind of thing. And then in February 2019, I was at this point fed up of the company I worked with. I felt they didn't really appreciate people, they didn't respect people, and I wanted to move on. I just needed a change. I ended up having a bit of a crosswords with one of my managers. And when I say crosswords, he said things I didn't agree with. I said things that he definitely didn't agree with. At the end, he said, Jamie, I think it's time to put our cards on the table. I said, I totally agree. I took my ID cards off, I put them on the table, said I quit. I walked out, sat in my car and went, but I didn't have that much bills to pay, because by this point, the house was gone, and I was living at home with my mum, and some of my outgoings were quite low. And I went, you know what? See no bounds. It's got to work. I've got to turn it into a business. And that was when it really triggered off. And yeah, I was getting gigs and getting booked up, all the time. And it was paying for itself. So even though it started in 2016, it started in 2014, but it really became a thing in 2019. So it's a journey between it. There's not a real time when I've gone this is the point. But obviously winning the Charles Holland Award was a massive launch pad. But for anyone getting into speaking as a career, it's a difficult thing to do. I've done a lot of voluntary work first, voluntary talks in local schools and stuff like that, which I love. And I still love doing that now. I still do it now.
How naturally did it come to you, Jamie? Because it's one thing doing what you did and recognizing that your life's got to change and you were this different person now, and you threw yourself into these different activities, if you like, which suited your new capabilities. But then it's one thing doing it, it's one thing speaking and expressing it. How naturally did it come, or did it take a while for it to be able to come naturally?
To be honest with you, I've also got a career in theatre.
Okay.
So that's a whole different ball game, right? But yeah, so I used to do amateur drama. So being out in public was quite. When I came out of the army, I was quite agoraphobic. I didn't really like being in crowds. I was very anxious about people. And yeah, one day I just said, I got to change this. And I joined an Amdram group. Certainly brought me out. That was very interesting. So I'd already had that kind of on-stage presence, that on-stage experience of being able to ad-lib. And if ever you want to learn how to ad-lib, do a panto, right? Because half the people on there don't know the lines. It's chaotic at best.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of experienced that kind of stage presence anyway, and how to project into a room. So that kind of side of it, no, that was quite easy. One of the things that I'm not very good at is preparing myself. Because it's my story, I don't like to overthink what I'm talking about. I like to just kind of go in and I tell my story, and that becomes natural to me because I'm living it and breathing it. So that side of it is quite easy. The part I struggle with is when people say, "Can you prepare this for me?" And I'm like, oh, now I've got to do a script, and that doesn't come so naturally. So
Okay.
yeah, but I can do it, and I still do it, but I find it a lot harder to keep track of what I'm doing rather than just being natural and speaking and going into the story.
I suppose when you say, anyone wanting to go into motivational speaking, and you're saying about your story there, it's not really something I imagine that you think, right, I'm going to become a motivational speaker. It's, life and circumstances and how you deal with things and how you move on and how you progress, the challenges you take on becomes something that people want to listen to, really, isn't it? And you've got to have that behind you.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have the charisma and the personality, I think, to be able to deliver it as well. So
I think, so me personally, right, everyone's got a story. All right. You guys have both got stories. Do you know what I mean? And I could do a podcast with Fraser and find out how you got into journalism, and then especially sports journalism, and the same for you, Fintan, how you got into what you're doing. And, and the truth of the matter is they may not be interesting to one person, but they're really interesting to another. And that's something that people have got to remember in their life, is their story is valuable to someone. And the people that it is valued to most of all are young people. Because young people, they love to learn about things, and they're given a bad cred, which is why I enjoy working with them. And so, for me as a motivational speaker, and I use that terminology in quote marks, as a motivational speaker, I have a very specific story with a very specific message. My message is actually not about motivation. My message is, when you fall over, get back up. That's always been my message. And it's when I drive in. And the other message I always give is, if you've got nothing to say, be the one that listens, because by listening, you could literally save someone's life. And the best people to give that message to are young people. And that's why I don't generally, when someone says to me, I want to become a speaker, I always say to them, well, that's great. Because there's people out there that go, do you know, I really fancy doing that. I like being on stage, and I want to tell people my story, and I want to empower people, and I want to share my story. And I go, great. That's your aim. Your aim is to empower people. But what is your message? Because you need, like you said, Fintan, you need a message. Otherwise, you're just talking. And you can do that in the pub. So, you need that message, that direct message. And mine is always about get back up, respect failure, because everyone fails. We all fail. Fraser, I don't suppose you left school and just became a sports journalist and was in all the top papers. Life was great. Yeah, you failed it.
I definitely did have a couple of bumps along the way. Yeah,
exactly. But every time you fell and you failed, what did you do? You got back up. You got back up and you tried again. You tried again. You failed again. You failed again. You tried again. You tried again. You failed again. Eventually, you succeeded. And that's my message. And it's a message that we all do. We just don't realize it. And it's young people that really take that message on board, because they go, actually, it's okay to fail. Because there's so much pressure on society. You've got to be doing this. You should be doing that. You're 20 now. You should be doing this. You're 33. You're not married. Why are you not married? And why haven't you got kids? Because I'm a human being. I've got a different path in life. I try and give that message that it's okay. It's okay to do that. So yeah, it's all about the message.
This is something we seem to touch upon now, whoever the guest and whatever the subject. It's all so relative in the modern world. But that fear of failure, is it enhanced by the world we live in, social media, the bubble that we seem to live in, where every mistake, every failure, every mishap, if you like, is now almost goes viral, and it doesn't go viral worldwide like celebrities. It might go viral within your own little circle of friends, and it's there to be mocked. And there's sometimes, I think, a fear of slipping up, knowing that it's going to go a lot further than just you and your mate who've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, in school, I was bullied all the way through school, right? And it's no big story. Many people out there get bullied, and I was quite badly bullied. And I hated school. So there was always that pressure on me to, in my own head, it was in my own mind, you know, I have to wear the right shoes. I have to do this. I have to do that. You know, otherwise I'm going to get picked on. Then I kind of went, this is one of the lessons I learned in life, right? This is one of the lessons I learned after becoming disabled was, do you know what, actually, no one really cares that much. Like, they only care for a very short period of time, and then they move on to the next big subject. But what feeds someone's fear, or what feeds someone's, you know, society is people's fear of failure, right? I don't fear it. I actually quite like failure. All right, I'm one of those weird people, because when I do something and it goes wrong, I go, right, well, I've learned from that now. Now I get to do it differently and do it better. You know, I don't get all anguish about it. I just embrace it and I respect it, because, and I even sometimes shout about it, because it shows people, and again, especially young people, that, you know, everyone fails. Everyone fails. And there's an old saying that if someone mocks you for failing, it's because they want to hold you back. But to hold you back, they've got to be behind you. Yeah. So if they're holding you back by mocking you, remember they're behind you. You don't even have to take any notice of that. You can just move forward and ignore that. So, and I think, you know, you've got social media and you've got all those platforms, and if used in the right mannerism, they're a fantastic tool. I use them myself in my own business. But I think the world forgets very, very quickly, actually, about that peer pressure and what that effect can have on people. I try to rise above it. I'm used to people mocking me. I'm used to people, you know, criticizing me. And when you're in the public eye, that happens. And the quick lesson for everybody to learn is it's not about the failing. That's not the problem. And it's not about people failing. You know, if someone wants to mock you, that says more about them than you. But the difference is what you do, the reaction that you take. So if you fail and you say, oh, do you know what, hands up, guys, I messed up, I failed, I haven't done it right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the drawing board. And then in a couple of weeks' time, you go, you know, I failed last week. Guess what? No, I succeeded in your face. And I think that's a great message, especially, again, for young, a lot of my talks and messages are for young people, but they work for older people as well, you know. The biggest message is shout about it. When you fail, go, yeah, I've done this. And oh, it went completely wrong. Because you take all the stigma away from it then. They go, oh, well, they're not bothered by it, so why should I be? You know, that kind of mentality. But I think we're in a troubled world, and unfortunately, all we hear about is negative.
Yeah.
But for every negative thing that you hear out there, for every negative person that says something negative to you, there's actually 10 people behind them that says something positive. But the problem is everyone concentrates too solely on the negative, and they don't see the positive. It's like everyone wants to complain, but they never call up to say, thank you so much for doing a wonderful job for me. And I think if more people went, actually, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to tell, you know, I'm going to say you're doing wonderful today. I think the world will be a better place. And it will push out, it'll silence the rest of the world. And I think the media, sorry, Fraser, I'm going to come straight into there, but I think the media have got a massive responsibility for that. Possibly not in your world, but, you know, there's a lot of aspects about the media, and you take the current situations, you know, before, so with Brexit, and the media pumped out about Brexit, caused a lot of anxiety and a lot of trouble and worry about the future. Then after Brexit seems to have disappeared into the midst of the pandemic. And then it was the pandemic, you know, everyone's dying, the world is dying, everyone's dying. And that causes hysteria, like incredible hysteria. And there's a story I'll share with that in a second. And then, so that all went, and then it was Black Lives Matter. And yes, all, you know, in my opinion, all lives matter, you know, but that was then more fear, more hysteria was caused again by the media. And I think that they have a massive responsibility to give that non-biased effect, you know, not just tell the bad news. I mean, we're all of an age where we can remember the news, and you'd have all the news, and then at the end it would always say, and on a positive note, little Jimmy helped Nancy across the road this week. How wonderful is that? Well, that's gone now. It's all negative. So it's not just in social media, it's in media in general. It's all about the negatives. And if the media turned around and said, well, actually, do you know what I mean? I'm not going to, look, Captain Moore is a prime example, something positive, and look how that went. All the negative news we forgot about. All we were interested in is this 100-year-old guy that was walking around his house, because it was positive. and people buy into positivity, but the press believe that they buy into negativity, and that is where the biggest amount of anxiety comes from, and depression. And sorry, I got on my sandbag there, but I do believe that is the fact. I think we all hold a responsibility to say, yeah, do you know what, that negativity is out there. That's true. However, what about all this good stuff that's happening? What about all this positive stuff that's happening? What about that lunatic from Cwmbran who climbed a mountain on his hands? How cool was that? Or, what about, little Jimmy down the road who, is doing a paper round for free or delivering shopping? These are the people that need to be getting on the news, not, people rioting and protesting and what it's just raising that hysteria that, unfortunately, I think then turns a negative stance. And unfortunately, I think the media and social media have got a lot to blame for that. Sorry, guys. I went a bit deep there.
No. I wish I had a defence plan, but
but I don't think.
Look, no, it's interesting. It's an interesting point, and it is. I think whether we work in the media or not, I think we can all accept that the media has got to take, its portion of blame and responsibility for the way it portrayed certain things and the way it's behaved as an industry in recent years. And I do think there's a lot of credence to what you're saying there. I think there is maybe another side as well. I think society sometimes, the line between fake news now, you just don't know. Is it?
Oh, that's true.
Is it the media putting out fake news for attention and web hits, or society screaming fake news because there's something they don't want to believe to be true, and it's all too easy to scream now, And I think, and this is again back to social media because that's such powerful and so many people are on it. The lines are now so blurry. But it's certainly the way the media's perceived things, from Brexit and through to this and Black Lives Matter, and there's so many, I think, hypocrisies that have come up as well. We saw one the other day. We saw Sky News spend a day, I think it was Bournemouth Beach, if I remember rightly. Images from there and projecting them as disgraceful scenes as
Ogmore was another one
and everything. And then that very night, they were outside Anfield when Liverpool won the league, saying we're going live to Anfield with the Liverpool fans who are jumping around the background without a hint of social distance. So almost there, they were encouraging it. They were encouraging us and the masses because that made for better TV. And I think that's the sort of thing which we need to assess now. And that when you talk about reporting neutrally and fairly, those are the sort of differences, if you like, that need to be clarified.
Yeah, I think you're in a different world of journalism, though.
Yes, thankfully.
It's cool, man. But sport's a positive thing, isn't it? So, I love sport. I don't watch sport. I'm not a sports fan. We don't even own a telly now, so I don't. It's not about that. I love playing sport, and I know what sport can do. Sport brings people together. It encourages people to do, step outside the box. It releases the tension of the everyday life. Yeah. They can concentrate on something else without having to think about all the other pressures that's currently happening in the world. So I'm a massive ambassador for sport, and I'm a massive ambassador for anything to do with sport. And so you've got one of the, in my opinion, there's only one job better than giving someone, as far as journalism, there's only one journalism job better than sport, and that's if I was a motorcycle journalist, right? Because I love motorbikes. But you get to give people their hobby. You get to talk about their toys. That's always.
And again, I think that's probably come to light in the pandemic. You looked at, I just know from what I was writing, everyone was asking, was there no live sport, no feel-good factor? But there very much was, because you started off with a lot of people turning to charity raising through sport and virtual challenges and virtual running. And you had even local clubs around here, and collectively they'd run the distance of Kilimanjaro, or from
it's wicked, right?
Solva to Turin, or from Haken to Barcelona, and that sort of thing. So through, has shown what a powerful vehicle sport can be in terms of the feel-good factor. And I don't know your interest in football, but the return of the Premier League, that brought, there were perhaps controversial in some respects, but it's brought so much joy and fascination and focused so many people's minds. It's like give people a new lease of life just to be able to watch football on television again. And this is football in empty stadiums with no noise, But
glitter of normality, though, isn't it?
Yes, just the pure fact that it's back. Yeah.
I don't watch football. All right. You know, it's just not my cup of tea. But it's one of the biggest sports in the world, right? And it has to be, you know, people need that. They need that. Like, I don't believe in religion, right? I'm not religious, but I do believe in faith. And you know, I believe that if someone turns to something to help them and it helps them in a positive way, then that's a good thing. And if someone turns to sport to get them through this current situation, and you know, that's their hint of hope, then great. But they've got to respect it. They've got to respect that it's there for them, and that's, you know, so they've got to enjoy it, but respect other people. And I think if everybody does that, it's going to be great. And I can't wait to get back on a court. But unfortunately, both the sports I play are indoors, and indoors are on the category 4. So I don't think we're going to be having a season this year, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. But you know, hey ho, that's life. We're all in the same boat, right?
We lost Fintan there.
Oh, I can't hear Fintan.
No.
So it's just me and you, Fraser.
Just me, yeah. You back with us, Finn?
Can you hear me?
There we are, mate. Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Welcome back.
I'd be talking for hours. No one's been listening. Like, you know, I think, oh, just ignore me.
Live TV, guys. So those of you who are listening to the podcast, we had a few technical problems with our live performance.
I thought, oh, there we go. Then I'll just ignore myself. But no, what I was saying was, so you still playing sport then? You still find time to play the basketball and what are you playing? The basketball and the rugby at the moment, is it?
No, so I've retired from rugby because most disability sport is self-funded. Okay. And you know, when I played in the Six Nations, that little outing cost me just over $1,000 in wheels alone. So it's a very expensive hobby. Sport is, you know, if you go out running, if one of you guys decided, you know, I'm going to go for a walk up Brecon Beacons, all you got to do is go down to Mountain Warehouse or one of the others, you know, go outdoors, buy yourself a pair of boots and a nice pair of trousers, and you're off, right? But if I decide I want to take up a sport, I got to buy a wheelchair. Right? So it's a $5,000 investment. So yeah, it's a little bit different for us. But I still play basketball and I still play for Cardiff, which I do enjoy, although I'm not sure when we're going to get back onto it. And I do play squash, and I play with Rabina Squash Club in Cardiff. So I'm quite looking forward to that. However, my attention will be a little bit different this year because we're due to climb Everest now next year because it was postponed from this year.
I was about to say, you got something which definitely isn't indoor coming up.
Yeah. I've got to get a visa to get out of the country first, though. But, you know, it's small challenge. But yeah, so at the moment, a lot of my attention is going to be on that, and we are still training. You know, I've still got my crutches, and we go off walking, and we climb mountains wherever we can. Fortunately, we've got a mountain literally right outside our front door. We've got Timbalam. It's not the biggest mountain in the world, but you know, it's still an incline, and it's a great place to walk. And walking is something out of all the sports, right, in the world. I always say to people, just go for a walk. It's free. You can do it anywhere. Clears your head, puts you in a mind space. Do you know what I mean? It's fantastic for your mental health. It's fantastic for your well-being, and it's something that is the actual thing I missed when I became disabled. That was the one thing I missed the most. Not walking to the shops, that's overrated, but actually going for a walk in the wild, in the wilderness, away from, you know, society, away from people. If I couldn't get, you know, if I don't get Wi-Fi on my phone, then that is the better walk. I love it. So yeah, we're still walking, we're still getting out, still doing exercise, just not competitive, which is fine. I can live with that. So whether I go back into the season now when it opens on either one of the sports, I don't know. I might take a year out and just concentrate on Everest, make sure I'm 100% ready. Because I don't know, you may have heard of him, Fraser, but I'm not sure if you have. Has either of you ever heard of a motorcycle journalist called Andy Ibbott?
Not off the top of my head.
So Andy used to be a journalist for Motorcycle News and also Fast Bikes. And he had a stroke in 2014, I think 2013, 2014, and he's paralyzed from he went in for a simple operation in his neck to have a pea-sized cancer tumor removed from his neck. During the operation, they severed his artery going to his brain, and he had a massive stroke. went in for a routine operation that he should have been done and dusted in 3 hours, ended up with a 5% chance of survival. He's now come back to 80% mobility. He's got about 70% of his speech back, and he's now climbing Everest with us next year. So yeah, I want to make sure I'm like 100% ready, because if Andy gets up there and I don't, I'm going to be devastated. But yeah, he's a great guy and worth coming on to a show, actually.
Yeah, I mean that Everest trip. Last time I spoke to you, you were all getting ready to go on that for this year. So it's obviously been put back to next year. Have you got a date set? And you're talking roughly about the the training you're doing, sort of very base of it. But how long of an expedition is that going to be? And what sort of stuff do you have to sort of prepare yourself logistically and kit-wise for that?
Yes, so we leave on the 5th of May, 21. Preparation is some, you can do so much preparation, but there's some preparation you can't do, right? So I can't prepare myself for high altitude, because the only way you can prepare for high altitude is to be in high altitude. But I have got the added, so there's a group of us going. One of them is currently serving in the military. One of them is actually the guy that helps run the company that's taking us, which is Evertrek. Then there's Andy, obviously, who's had a stroke. There's myself, who's got CRPS, and then there's my fiancée Charlotte, who's actually also a qualified masseuse. So a lot of the prep work that's gone into involved in the climb is making sure that we've got this kit, making sure that we've got the right kit, time frames. We've given ourselves a bit of extra time just in case we have to have a rest day halfway up the mountain, and we've given ourselves a climatization time. Because we will be slower than your average climber, we will acclimatize easier, because we're not going up as quickly. So because we'll be going slower, we will acclimatize a bit easier. We've had to look at things like having extra Sherpas in order to assist me and Andy, because obviously there's going to be times when we're going to need physical assistance. So we've had to think about that. The crutches that I'll be using, which is the Smart Crutch with the FlexiFoot ferrule, they've been almost redesigned, which was originally back, not last year, year before, in order, because I was the one that started taking them off road, and I went back to the company and said, right, to make these an off-road crutch, we need to do this, which they then put into place, and now it's this really flexible, robust piece of kit that you can take off road. So it's about putting that through its paces and making sure that it's 100% ready, and trying to think about what could go wrong as well. So, do I need to take this? Do I need to take that? I can't take a spare set of crutches, so I need to take a single crutch with spare parts, so that I can kit out. But then the crutch needs to be slightly adjusted so that I can bolt on and bolt off parts without having to go to, without battery fittings. So there's that kind of stuff. So it's weird little things of preparation. But other than that, then it's just basically walking and getting the physical stamina in place. Charlotte has her own challenge to overcome because she's got a fear of heights. And Andy has got not angina. What's the condition where you don't, vertigo. So because of his stroke, he's now got vertigo. So he's got, we've got to put that in, plan that in as well. So yeah, there's lots of little challenges there, little things that we've got to put in place. But then, like I said, you're taking 2 disabled guys up the biggest mountain in the world. You've got to think outside the box and look at different ways in which you're going to do things to achieve that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a trek, that, isn't it? So other than, obviously you've done Pen y Fan. What sort of other high peaks have you done?
So we done Snowdon Christmas Day, which was quite cool. So it was Christmas Day. We climbed Snowdon there was like 6 foot snow at the top, and I was on crutches, plunging my way up there. It was quite sensational. But then when we got to the summit of Snowdon, the clouds parted. This seems to be a common thing for me, right? So it gets up to the summit of Snowdon and the clouds literally just part. Now, I've climbed Snowdon a dozen times. I've seen the view twice. All right. And my partner, she's Swedish, she'd never climbed Snowdon before. I was like, you do not understand how lucky you are, like how privileged you are to have this view right now. And I FaceTimed my mum, who was over my sister's having Christmas dinner. And I was like, Mum, check out the view. Like, I'm on the top of Snowdon, which was quite interesting. My mum was like, oh, hiya, you know, because she's older. And she's like, hiya. And then everyone else on the top of Snowdon was going, hiya. Back to my mum. That made her day. So we've done Snowdon, we've done Ben Everest, we've done quite a few, obviously, the mountains around here, Sugarloaf, Blorenge, Skirrid. The list goes on, because we try and climb. At one point, we were climbing 3 mountains a week, small mountains, bigger mountains. But we do try and climb at least 1 mountain a week. We've got Tumbalum, like I said, just over there. But with Tumbalum, where we live, we've got loads of like different walks as well. So it's not always necessarily about climbing. No. It's about stamina. And bearing in mind, if you climb Ben Everest in a day, it's like 17K. You don't climb that in a day climbing Everest. So you don't need necessarily to climb 20 mountains to make yourself ready. But what you need is stamina. So we will go for a walk. Like Sunday, we went for a 32K walk. It took us 6 hours. And that was all on the canal. We had a bit of hill walking in there. We had some countryside walking. We had a bit of incline, you know, so we had it all kind of thrown in there. Yeah, so it's all about distance and getting that stamina built up.
Yeah, that's impressive. Although I think Snowdon being the highest in Wales and Everest a little bit different, mind, but
yeah, there's a bit of it.
But so your fiancee's go then? Did you say she's a Swedish masseuse? Did you?
Yeah. So well, she's trained in holistic therapy and massage, and she's from Sweden. But it's great because we've got a 3-bedroom house, and I've got the office in this room, and her office is the back bedroom. But the back bedroom's also got a permanent massage table in there. So I have electroshock treatment through a TENS machine a couple of times a week, which helps release the muscle tissue around my spine. But then also Charlotte works on me a couple of times a week as well. It can be differ depending how much pain I'm in, but she'll work on me like 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day or you know, twice a week or whatever the situation, which releases the muscles. Because the problem with my condition is my body knows that there's something wrong, and your muscles will clump together to protect the nerve that's damaged. So I can have literally a knot in my back the size of a rugby ball, and she's then got to try and work that knot out. But that can literally be the difference to me crawling around on my hands and knees or walking. So yeah, that treatment is very important. But also it's making sure I can't contain lactose, because that lactose causes what you guys would have, like if you do sport and then you get that lactose buildup in your muscles, that then causes cramp and stuff like that. Well, a cramp can cause a complete body spasm, and they can be so violent that they actually burst the blood vessels in my eyes. So I have them at night, and you know, they're almost like night tremors, and you know, Charlotte has to kind of almost hold me to kind of slow them down. So you know, it's all relevant, and Charlotte's got to work out on the climb, because not only has she got to get up there, she's then got to make sure I get up there as well. And when we're training, you know, during the training, it's great to have her there and have her support there, because I know that she's going to be able to back me and support me all the way. Just
touching on that, and the actual, does doing the physical activity of, you know, like a 32K walk, does that make things worse for you significantly? Or if you were just to say, well, if you were to just say, accept, right, you know, I can't move as much, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to watch telly all day, and I'm just going to live my life like that, or getting out there, does that put extra strain on your body, or does it actually make you, I know it'll make your head feel better, but does it make your body feel better moving?
It's like a pendulum. So if I don't exercise, it makes my body worse because everything seizes up. And if I over exercise, it makes everything worse because my body aches. However, the recovery from an aching body is better than the journey from a seized body. So the answer is both of them are or can be as bad as the other. However, I can put things into place for recovery. What I can't do is then I can't do anything. If I just sit still and go seized up, I can't do anything from that. The only way I can do that is to then get active. But if I'm already active, I can always have massage therapy. I've got pain therapy. I've got ways of managing my pain. I've got 2 TENS machines. One of them has an 8-port electrode treatment, which goes all the way down my spine and down my legs. The other one has a 4-port, which is more specific. So there's always something I can do for being seized up. But the truth of the matter is, for being overactive, sorry. But the truth of the matter is, I know I'm going to be in pain, but I'm going to be in pain anyway. So what I like to do, I just go, people say to me, if you want to take it steady, or you want to slow down, or you want to calm down. And I'm like, why? Because I'm going to be in pain anyway. I'm going to be in pain tomorrow when I wake up in the morning. I know that. But is it not better to say, I'm in pain today, but God, I had a lovely walk. Did you remember that heron we seen on the canal? What is better? No? And it's a double-edged sword. But I know which one is more positive. So I have the pain. I have the pain either way.
Just say that's you do get people that you meet all the time. I've stopped doing this because I've got sciatica, or I've got a bad back, or I've got arthritis, and that's their excuse for not doing anything. And nowhere near on the same level as pain as you, but you do sort of say to these people, well, you've got to keep moving. You're just using that as an excuse not to do something. You've got to keep going because, as you quite rightly say, you're going to have the pain either way, but it's better to have the pain and your head be, full of good thoughts and positive thoughts, isn't it?
Yeah, and the best cure for sciatica, funny enough, is walking.
Yeah.
And actually the best cure for arthritis is exercise.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny, really, that they use, and I know people like that as well. You know what I mean? And I just say, well, get out and about, and they go, oh yeah, I've got a bad back, and I'm like, no, you don't know the meaning of the word. I don't say that. Pain is respectful, but I do say to them, yeah, but even though you've got a bad back, that doesn't mean you have to do nothing. Like nothing is worse than anything else. Like, because where do you go from nothing? Like you can't go anywhere, can you? Like if you go out and do something, you can always rest. But if you're doing nothing, where do you go from that? There's no recovery from doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it's a vicious circle, and so many people are in that circle. So many people are in that circle. And I remember when I'd done my first talk, it was about the What For challenge, and I put the video went live. I didn't video it, but someone videoed me climbing up Penny Van on my hands, and it went live, and in 4 days it went absolutely viral, and literally viral. It was like 69,000 hits in like 4 days or something. And it's every now and again it still crops up on my wall. Like, someone will go, check out this guy, and I'm like, yeah, really, I know him quite well. But the amount of people that contacted me afterwards and said, I've always put off this challenge because I felt like I was overweight, or I felt like I couldn't do it for whatever reason. And then they signed up the next year, and the next year they actually doubled. They had to turn people away from the challenge, which was great. It's great. So I inspired a couple of people, and that makes life worthwhile. So it's always.
I had written down there the What For challenge to ask you about that because I know quite a few people who've done that, and I've contemplated a few times doing it myself. But the first time you did it, you saying you went around on a wheelchair? Was it?
Yeah. So I took a wheelchair designed for Tesco's. I took a mountain bike designed for a 5-year-old. I then cut the front end off the mountain bike and the front end off the wheelchair. You can kind of see what happened. I welded the front end of the mountain bike to the back end of the wheelchair, and I made a trike, which had some interesting test runs. Because the one thing if either of you have ever done mountain biking, there's one thing that you use a lot when you're coming downhill on a mountain bike, and that's your brakes. And the one thing that I did not think about when I was designing and building my wheelchair was brakes. So when I went up the Sugarloaf Mountain, it took me like 4 hours to climb Sugarloaf Mountain in my wheelchair, and it took me like 15 minutes to get off. That was interesting. That came with some crazy test rides. But yeah, so I was the first, I think I'm the only person actually to have climbed Penny Van, or to have completed the What For challenge in a wheelchair. And I won the Greatest Achievement Award that year. So yeah, it was quite interesting time. It's a good challenge actually.
Yeah, that'd be tough going. That would. Just thinking of those mountains and that course and everything. That must have been a real battle of the mind there. Fair play.
It was a battle for everybody. I mean, it's not just like, in fairness, I spent a lot of my time out of the chair actually, and crawling, because the chair wouldn't have gone down that area, or so I'd spent a lot of time out of the chair. But I had a fantastic team. My nephew was one of them, and my nephew hadn't long come out of the army at the time, so he was like, well, he still is. He's as strong as an ox. So he was there, and he was like, massive support. And he was carrying me at some points. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, I was 15 stone. So, and he was just slinging me on the shoulders. And I was like, why don't I do the whole climb like this? This is much better. But yeah, so I had a massive support team. But I would recommend the What For challenge to anybody who because it's a challenge, and you do it with 4 or 6 people. I think they've made it now at 2 people, and they've extended the challenge well. So you used to be a 30k and a 40k. It took me like 15 hours the first time of doing it, and the second time when I did it on crutches, I've done it in 13 and a half hours, and that was hard going. That was probably harder than the wheelchair actually in a lot of places, but yeah, it was a good challenge, and I'd recommend it to anybody. It's a great way of doing a little bit, getting out, getting about, and you actually find that you really love being outdoors. I think many people got into it just because you love your outdoors, don't you, Fintan?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, all lockdown, I've just enjoyed getting out and about, and discovering new paths and the little mountains we've got around us. Sort of, I know every single path of those up there now. Like, I was pretty good on them before, but yeah, it's so good for everything. And you're on about walking and stuff. Walking is just brilliant. I've been this morning. I've done like a 7k coast path, slow run, walk, slow run. I mean, when Fraser does it, he's going as fast as he can, like trying to break some world record. But but I
don't worry about breaking records, Fraser. Just be the first.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what else you do.
Yeah. But am I right in saying you've done the Welsh 3 Peaks sort of continuously as a challenge?
Yeah. Cause I've done it twice now.
Yeah, because we're looking at doing that at the end of this month if we can, with with the restrictions and everything, and so that might be our first event that we're back. So I was just thinking, well, sort of, you did that in a pretty good time.
The first time I've done the 3 Peaks challenge, I'd done it in just over 13 hours. Wrong, just over 12 hours. 12 hours and 40 minutes, I think it was. The second time I did it, I never completed, so I got halfway up Penny Van, but I did that on crutches and calipers. And to be fair, like I done Snowdon, and that was fine. I was quite a bit of pain after that, and then I done Cadidrus. Cadidrus is if I could swear, like that would be the word that I would use. Cadidrus. It's an horrendous mountain.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's so much steps. Like this, it doesn't matter which path you do, whether you do the horseshoe path or whether you do Pig's Trail or Donkey's Trail. It's all the same. Not Pig's, Donkey's Trail. Sorry. It's just steps, and steps for me are like a nemesis. So by the time I come off Cadidrus in that challenge, my calipers had dug into the backs of my legs, and the back of my legs were bleeding. And I thought I could kind of, I'm a bit of an expert when it comes to pain, so I thought I could just foot the pain, but I was mistaken. I got halfway up Penny Van, and the pain was just horrendous, and I could feel my legs clamping. I knew that if I carried on, I wouldn't have been able to get back down, and I won't do that. I won't put myself at risk. I think that's one of the biggest things whenever you do a challenge is to respect, especially mountains. People die on mountains. It's a fact of life. But the reason people die on them is because they don't respect them, and I always respect them. The mountain will be there tomorrow. If I fail, that's fine. I get to go back. So that was the second time I'd done the 3 Peaks. The third time, me and my nephew, was that April last year, or April the year before, something like that. We hit every weather front that you could hit. So we climbed Snowdon first, and again, 6-7 foot of snow. My nephew, bless him, was chipping the snow away in front of us, which made for an interesting climb. And then Cad Idris, we went the horseshoe route. We had torrential storms. When I say torrential storms, I'm like monsoon storms, right, coming down on us. Then we came out of the woods. So we're going up these steps in storms. We came out of the woods and it was sunshine. We stood in this one place. We were watching a blizzard come in on the right-hand side. We were watching storms on the left-hand side, and we were stood in sunshine. So anyway, we tried to go as far as we could. We got 90 foot from the summit, and it was just dangerous. And I said to my nephew, I said, right, come on, but we're going back. And he was like, but we were nearly there, Uncle Jay. And I was like, yeah, but it can change. Like, it can change in a heartbeat. And it's not you I'm worried about, it's your mother. And if I get you killed on this mountain, like, it's going to turn out a bad day for me. And that was the first lesson he had of how things can change and how you've got to respect the mountain. So yeah, we called it off. We never did pay for then. So yeah, I've attempted it a couple of times, but I've achieved it a couple of times as well.
Yeah, it's first time I went up Cad Idris, and it was the first time I'd ever been up there, and we got to where the gate is. You get over, so you're virtually at the top, but you've got to drop down a little bit and come out, and the mist just came in and the weather came in, and I turned around, I said to the people I was with, I said, oh well, we're almost there. I said, well, we've never been to the top there, it's we're just gonna have to do it again sometime, and it's a good climb to that point as well, like, because you put a lot of effort in, like, but
it was that gate is where we put because you go over, it's like you go over like a stile, don't you? And then you go up. And if you come up like that, you can kind of look down the valley the one way and look into the valley the other. And I looked over the valley. I could watch the snow moving up through the valley. It was like a brick wall coming towards us. And I watched it come up, and then eventually we were in this blizzard, and we literally couldn't see. I struggled to see the ground. I got my nephew to come right close to me because he was 15, 16 at the time. So I got him right close to me so that I could touch him, basically. And we just guided each other off the mountain. And it was we only had to go like 50 yards, and then we were back under that blizzard again. But that 50 yards, like, I can't even tell you how like frightened I was, mainly because I've got this young person with me who obviously I adore. He's my nephew, but I'm responsible for him. And it wasn't just me in that mountain. It wasn't just me out there in the elements. I was looking after someone else who effectively was actually looking after me, which is quite ironic. But yeah, you've got to respect the people around you. You've got to respect the mountain. You've got to respect the weather, and you've got to respect the fact that if the mountain doesn't want you to pass, you will not pass.
No, it's definitely. So I mean, that's fascinating listening to your story there. So what do you see the future holding for you then? So if you got Everest coming up then, and then I know obviously we've talked about not looking too far into the future because it can give us all anxiety, but what have you? Where could you see it going? Just building your company.
Yes. So
Bounds.
We grew Sino Bounds. I mean, originally Sino Bounds came out of the ashes of my life anyway, and then we were running a dropship company, and that kind of all crashed down, and the talks all crashed down. We turned around. We've now got an online community center where we've got a business directory, we've got the onboard school, we've got an events board, we've got a marketplace. We work with a massive range of companies now, and that is like super exciting, and I'm absolutely loving building those relationships with people. And the truth is, I just want to see people succeed, and I love seeing people succeed. So the aim of Sino Bounds is that everyone grows together and succeeds together. And so I'm quite excited about that. We've got Everest coming up now next year. Then I think after Everest, it's probably going to be Machu Picchu, because I've always wanted to do it. And so Charlotte. So that's probably going to be in a couple of years' time, maybe 2-3 years' time. So that's happening. That's quite exciting. But then I've got to respect my condition as well, because it's a degenerative condition. So the truth of the matter is, eventually my body is going to fail. It's going to not do what I want it to do. Probably not through choice, but I will keep driving it as much as I can and keep as fit as I can. A lot of people with my condition lose limbs. My biggest determination is to not get to that stage, but I may not get a choice in that. But yeah, I'm just trying to do as much of the positive stuff as I can. So getting out there. I want to get back into school. I can't wait to get back into schools and work with young people again and see them succeed and see them building. I'm doing a lot more, well, hopefully be doing a lot more work with the Prince's Trust, which is where we met Fintan. So I'm quite excited about that. There's lots of exciting things in place for the future. And as I always say, if I can, influence one person or inspire one person, then I'm successful. And I'm very fortunate, very lucky to be in a position where I can do that. But it's a position that I respect and love doing. So yeah, can't wait to get back into schools and actually start working with people again.
I've had a few schools contact me recently about doing like team building stuff and youth clubs as well, about team building stuff and talking about motivation and stuff. And your name came up straight away, so I was thinking, I've passed your details on to them, and hopefully once they settle down at the beginning of next term and they start looking at these things, because I think they're looking at projects now that they can look to sort of try and build the confidence back up after the lockdown period and the absence of the schools for the kids. So yeah, I sort of put your name forward and said, look, this is a good guy to speak to.
Brilliant. Yeah, because I do a lot of like helping people with their mentality about it as well. So not mental health, even though I'm a qualified NLP practitioner, but what I tend to do with people is help them to think about what they're doing, rather than this situation everyone's in. And yes, there's a lot of anxiety about it and a lot of build up, but what people have got to remember is we are actually the future. We are the people that are pioneering. We're not winning, we're not breaking records, we're pioneering. We are the first to, schools have become the first class to learn to do their year online or to do this or do that. And I think sometimes everybody involved, the teachers, the kids, the parents, they all need to understand that they've all got that little bit of responsibility to remember what they're doing is important. And I try and get people to remember that.
Yeah, you've talked about looking forward there, but just before we round things up now, you're obviously a tremendously positive character and an inspiring, motivational character as well. But do you ever take time to think about everything you've been through and talking about the achievements, the things we've talked about here, the awards, obviously the diagnosis, the tragedy with your father, and then the situations with your mother and your brother? And I think, if you don't mind me saying, obviously there was a tragic incident with your nephew, which we haven't even been touched upon, and with your sister Liz as well. And just all your experiences and where you are now and how that's all defined you. Do you ever take time just to take stock and think, well, I've been through a bumpy ride. I'm not going to say a rough ride, because you've made the most of it and you've come out, making very much the best of your own situation. But do you ever take stock to think, it's been a hell of a ride?
Someone said to me, do I believe in karma? I wasn't quite sure they were going with that. I was like, I do, it happens. And now that you've put it into my trail of thought, I've been really horrible in a past life. But yeah, no, I do it a lot, actually. I mean, yeah, you just touched with my nephew. So I lost my nephew in January this year. He was 6 years old. And yeah, he passed away quite suddenly.
Yes.
And yeah, that was, that's hard. My family as a whole have been through its troubles. And my sister, bless her, that's her third child she's lost.
Right.
And my brother's lost a child as well. And my mum's lost a child as well. So, child fatality in our family is something that we've come to deal with over the years as well. And as well as the loss of my father, which that happens. People lose parents. It's unfortunately, it's the one thing in life that you can guarantee. But yeah, I do take stock in it, because I still consider myself very lucky. I'm still here. Like, we're still here. My family's still here. I believe my determination and my strength comes from my family. My mum, bless her, she's had cancer 5 times. She's had 3 heart attacks, coccygeal septic ischemic meningitis, a 3-inch brain tumor. But then during this pandemic, she's walked over 300 miles by doing 3.5 miles a day. So
Yeah.
I've got the fruit never fell far from the tree with us. And as a family, we're a very strong family, we're a very close family. And don't be wrong, there's times when I could throttle my brother and my sister, but I love them to bits.
Aren't we all, mate?
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. Well, maybe a little bit, but but in general, I look at those around me, and I just think how lucky I am. I always tell myself how lucky I am. I'm very lucky. I've got a wonderful life. I've got a lovely home. My fiance is absolute salt of the earth. I couldn't ask for better. She looks after me. She cares for me. She makes sure I'm okay. And that's not many people get that. But then I've also got a family that I can turn to at any time and go, I'm not feeling very well this day, or I'm struggling a bit at the moment. And my sister, she's currently going through some serious post-traumatic stress.
Sure.
She's got that same support from the family as a unit. So I think that's important, and I think that's probably where I get a lot of my strength, or it's certainly where I get my resilience from. Is I've got massive role models, and I've been very lucky about that as well. So yeah, it's a good question. That is, it's a good question to ask. And yeah, I do look back and think, God, it's been a rough ride, but at the same time, I've done things that I would never have done, and I've experienced.
Certainly, yes. I'm not talking about dwelling on negatives here, obviously. I'm just simply been wondering. It's just a story for a few years, obviously.
That's it. I mean, that's all. But it's a very positive. I'll tell you a quick story which sums up the answer to your question, right? And I know I'm very conscious of time, so I'll keep it quick. But I was due to be to compete in quite a big event. I'm not going to mention it, but I was due to compete in a big event for my country. And when they done the press release on me, they made my story very X Factor, the big sob story. And I said to him, but my story is not a sob story. That's not how I want to project it. And he was like, oh yeah, but it makes for better publicity. And I said, well, in that case, then I don't want to be involved with this, because I don't want people to look at my situation, my journey, my condition, the life that I've lived as a negative, because it's not.
Sure.
Yeah. And this answers the question that you're saying. So yeah, I do look back at it, but I look back at it in a very positive, and I'm very fond of that way. And I get to meet people like yourselves who want to chat to me and just talk to me and have a conversation with me. And again, positive. This story is going to go out. People are going to listen to the story, and yes, there's going to be an impact where they go, wow, would I have coped with that? The truth of the matter is, yes, you would have. And that's the principle. I often look back and go, do you know what? I am strong. I am a hard case because I have lived through this where a lot of people wouldn't have. And that's how I look at it. So yeah, I think it's a great question. Thank you so much for asking, because I think that ties up a little bit of the message that you guys want to get across with this podcast is life sucks, right? It throws stuff at you that you just don't expect, but it keeps that same message. We fall over, but we get back up, and it's amazing the things you can achieve when you just get back up and try again. You will, honestly, anyone listening to this show will, if you do that, you will surprise yourself. Absolutely surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Long drawn answer.
No, that's
brilliant answer.
That is a brilliant answer. Right. Before we finish, what I tend to do is just ask a bit of a lockdown, lowdown, sort of see what people's choice are. Only a little bit of fun here. I'm going to give you 2 choices, and you choose which one you prefer the best. So if I go first, and as we've been talking, I can answer some of these because you've sort of touched on them. But social media or TV, which would you give up?
Well, I've already given up TV, so I'll give up social media.
You
already answered this.
Right. Squash or rugby?
Squash.
You'd give up squash?
Oh no, I give up rugby.
You give up rugby.
I give up
You
rugby,
take squash. Rugby or basketball?
I give up rugby, stick to basketball.
Right. And this one we just touched on a few moments ago. Is it leaving it to faith and karma, or are you a master of your own destiny?
I believe I'm a victim of karma, but I am a master of my own destiny. Yes, absolutely.
Nice one. And then the last one, if you had the choice just to do one of these, all right, and that is to compete in the Isle of Man TT or to climb Everest. Everest.
Yeah, Everest definitely is. I've been wanting to do Everest since I was 7 years old. So yeah, I wouldn't give that dream up if I'm going to be honest. But you know what? This is me. You never know what I'm going to be in 10 years. So who knows?
I tell you what, we'll definitely be. I'll be keeping an eye on you for that trip next year and what you're doing, and hopefully,
come back on when it's done.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll be in a studio then. You know, actually doing that. That would be nice. Will I be able to shake your hand?
I don't know. Have to.
We might be all, halfway.
Whatever.
No, but definitely be keeping track of that, and also, some of the groups that we work with, I'll be, we'll be passing your details on to them for sure. That's, that'd be good. All right.
Brilliant.
Jamie, a pleasure talking to you, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know, it's been an absolute pleasure for me. I mean, you guys got the job now to get this down to a 30-minute podcast.
Hey, we just put it out as it is, and
it's lockdown. People have got time on their hands.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, and thank you for putting the podcast together. Do you know what I mean? You guys are doing a great job, and yeah, we appreciate it. The world appreciates it. So well done, and thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey,
thank you, Jamie.
Good
all
to
the best.
See you, right? All right, we'll catch you later.
Take care. Bye now.